How's it going, YouTube? This is Justin Bozeman here. I'm just here once again with a very quick video. I want to challenge kind of the belief system that has been going on in the black community for a very long time. Among blacks, one of the things that I really catch and I observe is the cycle of poverty that we have within our inner cities. And it seems like you guys are okay with it. And what I mean by you guys, I mean black Democrats. It seems like they're okay with it. And let me explain what I mean. Ever since the 1960s, the late 1960s, going into the 70s, and especially 80s and 90s, the local governments who create most of the policy that affects the educational system in the schools, that affects the housing, that affects the taxes, that affects the bills, that affects basically the future projects and the budgets that are set up within these cities. If you look at the predominant black cities, such as, let's say, Baltimore or Detroit, just to name just a couple of different places, if you look at those governments and who they're run by, they've been run by the Democratic Party. Now, why is this important? Because I believe that Democrats have used a generational cycle of race war and of race warfare to brainwash the black community into believing that the reason why, for the most part, our inner cities are failing, why our schools are failing in the inner cities, is because of racism. And they've used this tactic for years and years and years and years, and I see it all the time. And to be honest, I get sick of seeing it. I get sick of trying to explain why this is inaccurate, because the Democrats have been in control locally over your school boards. If you're a predominantly African-American community, for the most part, you're electing Democratic representation, whether it be the mayor, whether it be the county treasurer, whether it be the director of the school board. You guys are electing these people. And our communities, ever since we started voting Democrat, and I include we because I am African American, I'm a black, I'm colored, I'm Negro, and I have to include myself with you guys only under the prospect of what my race is, even though I have not voted Democrat because I see something different. I believe that what the Democrats have done is they've kept us in a cycle of blaming the establishment for our cycle of poverty. It reminds me kind of a quote that I read years ago, and it was from Booker T. Washington. And he said, "There is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles and the wrongs and the hardships of the Negro race before public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because if they do, they will lose their jobs." And actually the quote is because they do not want to lose their jobs. So basically they want to stay in power, making a living off of race baiting and class warfare. That is what you're seeing going on now in the United States of America. You see a party that is hinged up against another party, and one party's main party focal line is injustice and inequality and class warfare at its finest, race warfare at its finest. When, believe it or not, even though people don't like to admit this, I had believed that we were making strides to bring the country back together again. But what the Democratic Party line has been, and what has been for a very long time, is they've made a career living off of preying off people's grievances, whether they're legitimate or even in this case, a lot of times unlegitimate in the Black community. For all those people who want to argue with me, I challenge you to find out who the rulers, and I say rulers, of your school boards are. Because you'll find out that they're being run, if you live in a predominantly African-American community, they're being run by Democrats, oftentimes into the ground. That's why your kids don't have the same equal education as the kids that are out in the suburbs. But they'll blame that on the Republicans or the whites or the establishment or the elites. But meanwhile, they're the elites themselves. See, these are a group of people who are unaffected by the policies that they themselves implement. I'm going to say that again so people understand that. These are a group of people who are in fact unaffected by the policies that they themselves implement. For instance, it doesn't bother them to have to pay an extra $150 in premiums to go to the emergency room if they have insurance, because they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars just being politicians, just living off of the nonprofit grievance world, or they're in office and that's what they do. They don't mind about the education system in most of these schools because they're sending their kids to private school. But yet they'll tell you that the reason why your schools are bad is because the white man isn't sharing. He's held you down. They don't address the real issues in the Black community that they have created, such as allowing women to be married to the state and not to a husband and get support. They don't address the loss of jobs in our communities. They don't address why is it possible for foreigners to come over here and to start businesses tax-free, while you, the natural born American citizen, cannot start anything without paying taxes. They don't explain why they put the interest of non-citizens over the rights of their own citizens. They don't explain that. They don't explain that while they're arguing that the illegal alien who has broken the law, they don't make those same arguments for the Black man who, was maybe selling some weed to provide for his family. They'll say that the illegal alien, well, he had good motives. He's a good person. But the Black man who's selling the weed and doing those things to try to make a living for his family, he's not a good person. They put him in jail. They signed those policies. But we'll never come to a place of where we can advance as a people until we take an honest look at how we raise our children. A lot of Black people are raising their children to automatically state racism has a reason of why they can't go anywhere, when other people come to this country and they get along just fine. But you're supporting a party that puts other people's needs above your own. Which is why I say Black Democrats are okay with the cycle of poverty. They don't address why the men aren't in the house. They don't address the problem of fatherless homes and lack of employment, bad educational standards for our schools. They don't address those issues. Nah. They blame it on the white man or the elites, the upper class folk. Every great society before they fell into a cycle of class warfare and race warfare. And every society that went through some sort of revolution that raised up a different regime of government was never better off. I think the only time in the history of the world where a better government rose up after having a revolution was here in the United States. It's one of the only times that you see that in history. But yet, Black Democrats are okay with the cycle of poverty. I'm Justin Bozeman signing off. Please comment and subscribe.